Hello and welcome to Discussions on Loss and Grief with Ray Warner, the podcast where we shine a light on the often avoided topics of grief and loss, while also getting to know a little bit about some amazing people who are no longer with us. I'm your host, Ray Warner, and on today's premiere episode, my guest is me. Yes, to kick off this podcast, I'll be interviewing myself in the same manner that I'll be interviewing my future guests. In this way, I'll be introducing both myself and the format of the show. So, this is the part where, in the actual guest uh, versions of episodes of this podcast, um, I will begin the interview. So, I'd like to introduce to you Ray Warner. So, first, tell the audience a little bit about yourself. So, my name is Ray Warner. I am 51 years young. I live in a suburb of Pittsburgh, and I am currently working for a small software company to support users of a teacher evaluation and compliance software, as well as supporting people who have experienced loss as a life coach. So, Ray, please tell the audience the story of your loss. So, my loss was my first wife. When we were in college, when I was a freshman and she was a sophomore, we first met. And in fact, even before that, she was a friend of my best friend from high school. And they were a year ahead of me, and he told me all about her and the letter he had gotten from her uh, at my high school graduation party. And just at the moment, everything he told me about her, even without having met her or anything, just what he told me about her, I had to stop. Maybe she's the one for me, the girlfriend I always wanted, because I always struggled with that in high school. And then I actually met her when I went to college. Um, she was gorgeous, beautiful blonde hair, beautiful blue eyes, um, and we had so much in common. She was same sense of humor, same music taste, same history, same backstory, same mental breakdowns and hang-ups. We were like identical twins almost. And so much identical twins that when we first met, we both had this huge crush on each other, but we were too afraid to tell each other because that's just who we were. We were just too afraid. So neither one of us told each other when we first met. And both of us went our separate ways, trying to date other people, some more successful than others, until the spring semester uh, of college when we finally came back around after having become best friends and sharing everything with each other. Um, and my cousin came up to visit, and I was talking all about her, like nothing nonstop. It was her birthday. I wanted to go get a present for her, and he looked at me and said, "You're in love with her, aren't you?" And I hadn't. It just at that point I had just set that aside. But when he said that, I realized, I was. And it was like, doy, and I just fell. And she was at the time dating somebody else, who it was a long distance relationship. And we got together and I told her how I felt, and she and I got upset and stormed off. But then we came back together and it was meant to be. We got together. She ended up up with that other guy who it was on the rocks anyways. That's part of what we talked about together. Was her upsets about the relationship that she was in. Because she trusted me so much to talk about that. So it was meant to be. I mean, so meant to be. I mean, we got officially got together at the end of May in 1992. Yes, a long time ago. Um, by June, we were already saying that we were unofficially engaged. It was just a foregone conclusion. We were going to be together forever. I mean, why not? It was a sentence, Ray and Meredith. So we were inseparable. We were soulmates, twin flames. I was hers and she was mine, and that's just we couldn't see anything other than a life together. Um, we were young though, so I mean, I was I don't even remember, but when we finally got married on my 22nd birthday in '95. Um, we'd been, really officially, unofficially, and then officially engaged for a while, and we'd been waiting to get married because we wanted a big wedding, but we didn't have any money for it. I mean, weddings are expensive. But then she got pregnant because we've been living together. And so we decided, it was a good idea to be married when the baby was born. So we got married on my 22nd birthday. Our daughter, Elizabeth, was born that following August. So she will actually this month, as I'm recording this, turn 29 this year, this month. So she was born in August. Um, and everything, was fine. Everything, was a C-section. She didn't want to come out, but no complications, no nothing. Now this is where I bring up Meredith had a seizure disorder, and but had been treated since college. They'd found the right dosage. She never had seizures unless she didn't take her meds, which was a never thing for her. I mean, she knew because if she didn't take her meds, she had a seizure, and then she couldn't drive. That was a big thing for her. If she had a seizure, she couldn't drive, and couldn't, she didn't want, that was like a big deal for her. She didn't want to have to go without driving because of this. It'd be a year. So when she was pregnant, they increased the dosage because being pregnant, you use more of the medicine. So to keep her levels at the right level, they had to increase the dose. So after she gave birth, they thought, oh well, we just need to lower it back to what it was because that's what the way it was. And so without consulting her neurologist, her obstetrician, her gynecologist, um, dropped it like this big chunk towards the final. And she wasn't acting like she was overdosing either. It was just normal. Everything was fine. No issues with the baby, nothing. But they did, let's just drop it down. So they did that. And for the week following that appointment, after they dropped it down, Meredith kept saying that she felt like she was almost having a seizure. And her seizures, they're always, as far as I ever knew her, when she had them, it was always waking up suddenly to an alarm clock. That was always the trigger. Nothing else. Never ever happened any other time. Um, and that's what ended up happening. The morning of September 15th or 14th, 95, she my alarm went off and she had a seizure. Usual, I've seen him before. I'd seen him before, and it was like any other. The only difference here, and I look back on it like this, the only difference here is she hit her head when she fell out of bed. She flipped out of bed and hit her head on the wall um, during the seizure. She came out of it like normal. Um, Everything was normal after a seizure um, for her that day. She did not want to go to the hospital um, and report that she'd had a seizure because, like I mentioned, if they knew that she had a seizure, she couldn't drive, and she didn't want to go through that. She knew it was just because of the meds. She just took more meds, and she was just gonna go on with her day. We went out to dinner. We watched some movies. I rented Pulp Fiction, and we watched that and we had to watch it because it was due that night. So by midnight, I had to get it back, or it'd be late. Um, so we watched that. Got done at 11:30. So I had to go back to the Blockbuster to return it for midnight. So I left. Meredith was in the kitchen. She was going to turn the computer on. She was going to get online, dial up back then. Yes. Um, I left, went to the video store, dropped off the movies, took a peek at the previously viewed movies. I was gone and then come back, and I was gone maybe 20 minutes. Um, when I came back, she was unconscious on the couch. She was not breathing, and I couldn't tell that if she had a heartbeat or not. I couldn't feel it. So I started what little bit of CPR that I remembered from Boy Scouts, trying to remember the right cadence. And when she didn't respond immediately, I called for an ambulance. They came and worked on her, and then they took her to the hospital. I followed with the baby, 1 month old child, and paced in the hallway outside the emergency room as they worked on her for a while, or at least it felt like a while. I don't remember how long it was, um, until they came out and finally told me that she was gone. And when they were working on her at the house, that was the first thought I thought. I was like, she's gone. I just knew it then. And yeah, she was gone. 1:09 a.m. on September 15th, 1995. That was the time of death. Um, after they told me, I went in and saw her. I took off her wedding ring and her engagement ring so that I would have it. And yeah, she was gone. She was my whole life. She was my everything. I tell this story about I wanted so badly to see Apollo 13, but she didn't want to see it. So because she didn't want to go, I didn't go either because I didn't want to go without her. That was our relationship. We were that inseparable. And I was now separated from her. Um, so yeah, that's the story of my loss of Meredith. So next question. What was the immediate impact of the loss on your life? So the immediate impact of Meredith's loss, she was actually the primary breadwinner. Um, I was trying to put myself through college to get a different degree. Um, and so she had the better job, the real job. I was just working part-time just to add to the income. And so now I had a baby. I was enrolled in college, and I had I mean, she was on disability for being pregnant, but that ran out. And I was grieving the loss of my soulmate. Um, it's so hard sometimes to think about what happened back then. Really, I shut down. I disconnected. Um, I didn't know what to do. I tried to push on as if nothing had happened with, obviously some things that couldn't be the same. I actually took the baby to class, tried to continue with that, but I wasn't in it. It wasn't in me. I didn't, so I stopped going to class. I stopped going out. I just holed up in my house. And Meredith wasn't an only child, so her parents were, their whole world was rocked as well. Um, and more, I would take the baby to their house and they would watch her, and it would be extended longer and longer and longer because I couldn't cope. And yeah, it was, I can't remember a lot of it. A lot of the first couple years are just gone from my memory. I just remember I would seek out certain things to listen to just to cry. The Braveheart soundtrack specifically was one that always triggered me. Um, that fall, that the song "One Sweet Day," Mariah Carey and Boys to Men came out, and that just, I mean, that's what it talks about. The song talks about loss and meeting them someday in heaven. Every time it came on, even now when I listen to music that came out in the fall of '95, um, it takes me back. Just emotionally takes me back. It makes me think of it. Um, Glycerine by Bush is one of the songs that always does that to me. Um, um, Next question. How has that impact changed over time? Um, it's gotten less raw. Um, I intentionally sought out another relationship probably quicker than I should have, with the thought of I need a mother for my daughter. That was my only thought. My thought for me, it was that was like secondary. It was like all about for having a mother for my daughter. Um, and I did, eventually get married, remarried, and we've been married for it'll be 26 years in October. Um, but even then, me and Meredith's daughter ended up living with Meredith's parents. They essentially raised her, and that's a whole different story that I won't even go into right now. But um, some things have lessened, and some things have not. Some things just come and go. The grief, me, one of the things that me and Meredith had so much in common was our love of sci-fi, certain, classic movie series, Star Wars, Star Trek, Indiana Jones. And every time a new entry in any one of those comes out, I think about how she might react to it, what her thoughts would be. Um, yeah, I mean, the impact as time went on, I got used to doing for myself because I was by myself. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's probably the best answer I have for that question. So next question, how has your loss changed your view of the future? How and has that shifted over time? Oh my God. I mean, back back, back then, all I saw was us building a family together, growing old together. Uh, my plans were me get my computer science degree, and I mean back then, who knew how big the internet and things would get. So I just wanted something that I knew was up and coming. Um, I don't even remember what specific I thought I'd do with it. Just I thought it was a better opportunity for a real job. Um, but the view of being with Meredith and Liz and the other kids we have, and just being together for our whole lives, that's gone. I mean, yes, I remarried. Yes, I have kids with with my second wife, but things it's harder to plan for the future because now I have in my head that it could happen again. So the thing that comes up for me is why plan for the future if something's gonna destroy it like it did before? And that comes and goes. Sometimes I'm like, oh yes, let's plan for the future. And sometimes I'm back to, what's the point? Um, the pointedness of that has shifted over time. That's probably the biggest thing. Um, yeah, that's probably the best answer I have for that question. Next question. What advice would you give to someone who has just experienced a loss? Oh, let yourself feel it. Don't try to stuff it. All of the pain, all of the anguish, all of the sadness, let it out. Because if you stuff it, it just festers. And you also get to come to terms with with the trauma, because this is a trauma. You get to come to terms with the trauma that you just experienced. But definitely give yourself grace. Let yourself get messy. Let yourself fall apart. And then come back together. It's like that, I'm sure you've seen those beams, the Japanese kintsugi, or how the bowl where they take the broken pottery and glue it back together with gold so it's stronger. It's a metaphor that's used a lot for a reason because it's true. I think the other thing that um, I would suggest, the other advice I would give is let your heart heal. Don't jump into something right away. Don't try to fill that gap with another person. Let your heart heal. Give it time. So that would be my advice. Next question. What advice would you give the family and friends of someone who's just experienced a loss on how to be around them from your experience? So for people who know and love someone who's just experienced a loss, give them that space and grace, but also check in on them. Don't let them go too long without a check-in, or, you know, bring them something. Um, Sometimes when you've gone through something like this, the last thing you want to do is cook or think about food. And that's the reason why, a lot of times people bring food to like the wakes and stuff. But the problem is it stops. The person who's experienced the loss need that. It needs to continue because while they're coming apart and breaking apart, they still need to eat. And thinking about that, that's the last thing in their mind. Um, the other thing is that whole they're in a better place thing, that doesn't work. It doesn't support it. It actually makes made me mad. That diminishes the place that they had here. So don't use that phrase at all. I hate it so much. And anybody who said that, I'm like, please stop. Don't. But also don't be on like don't avoid talking about the person. Don't worry about or upsetting the person who's experienced the loss by not talking about the person who's gone. They're still a part of life, even if they're not present physically. So don't pretend like they didn't exist because you're afraid of upsetting the person who experienced the loss. Um, Last question. Tell me about the person or thing, the person that you lost. Bring them to life with your words so that the listeners can feel as if they knew them. Meredith was such a light in this world. She was joyful and funny and smart. She had the best taste in music and movies. Like, yet we did disagree. She didn't like female artists. Like Alanis Morissette, she would have hated. And she came out with her first album right after Meredith died. That's the first thing I thought of was how much she would have hated Alanis Morissette. She cared for people so much. She loved so hard, so deeply, so warmly. She welcomed my family into hers, and she became a part of the family like immediately. My sister and her became the fastest friends. So much so that my first niece, my sister's daughter, her middle name is Meredith. Meredith was so kind and so loving and so attentive and so connected and so warm. She is everything that I strive to be because I want to keep her spirit alive in this world. And that's my story. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. This podcast will continue to have guests, people who have experienced loss, to tell these same stories about the person they lost and what happened and how they experienced and what they have to share, the wisdom they have to share. Grief is not something to be avoided. Grief happens to everybody at some point in life. It's a part of life. So we get to talk about it. We get to bring it out into the light. We get to shine that light on it so that it stops being such a taboo subject. And that's my goal here with this podcast. And that's my goal when I work with people who have experienced a loss, to remind them that they're still alive and the ways that they can keep the person they lost alive. I'm Ray Warner, and I'm the host of Discussions on Loss and Grief. It's been wonderful, and I hope you listen to the next episode. Thank you.